What's up everyone, it's ENDYMION, and if things weren't bleak before, the latest news surrounding the MCU, Disney, and the repercussions of South Park have all combined to create one of the worst eras in Disney history. There's a lot to go over today, so let's start with the Marvels, which as of the making of this video, it will be coming out very shortly. And it's looking to become one of the worst openings in Disney history for an MCU film. Remember when these movies were seen as events, you couldn't wait to have your butt seated to watch the Avengers assemble, or find out the aftermath between Cap and Iron Man in Civil War, the snap in Infinity War? Well, now you have the Marvels, which is getting absolutely eviscerated in every possible way. As of right now, The Marvels is sitting in the low 50s on Rotten Tomatoes, giving it the certified rotten score officially. You know it's bad when even the critics who have been ousted already for taking paychecks to artificially boost their reviews still couldn't give Disney's latest slop at least a passing score. Like Discussing Film's review, which they flat out say that the Marvel formula has run dry. Oh boy, that's not good. Discussing even says, the release of something as botched together as The Marvels feels like an even louder cry for help. Look, I knew this movie wasn't going to do well financially, but when the yes men and women of websites can't even hide how much of a stinker this is, you know it's bad. I should also remind you that it was Captain Marvel back in 2019 that resulted in Rotten Tomatoes scoring and reviewing getting revamped. This was done in order to avoid review bombing from fans. So to see its sequel getting torn apart by reviewers this time is like poetic justice for people like me. The Marvels is a movie written by an all-female team, directed by a woman of color, and stars 3 women. This should have been the easiest pandering slam dunk for Disney in years. So to see their own foot soldiers revolt like this is just mwah, it's chef's kiss to your viewer. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Oh, it's so delicious. I mean, just listen to Discussing Film explain how bad this movie is. Let's read a little excerpt from their review, and I quote, "Viewers are rushed into the story in such a poor way that they are expected to already know every piece of lore and background information. And when the plot is already too complicated for its own good, this makes The Marvels a very tedious watch. Casual Marvel fans will have a rough time keeping up, leaving only the die-hard fanatics as the ones who can enjoy the movie stress-free. And even then, there are more hurdles to get over. There's no other way to say this, but the screenplay is so butchered, and the editing is so hazardous to the point where studio interference is just way too obvious. The first 2 acts of The Marvels are merely a string of scenes barely tied together by a loose thread. One can't even tell when the first act ends and the second begins, with there being no consistent flow whatsoever. The 3 leads aren't given the proper time to grow as a team in this discombobulated edit, making it more disappointing for fans who have waited a long time to see this trio on the big screen together. The dynamic between Brie Larson and Teyonah Parris feels especially undercut given that Carol has known Monica since she was a child in the first movie. Iman Vellani is doing a lot of the heavy lifting with her natural charisma, though the script doesn't offer her much growth when she isn't playing the comedic relief of fangirling over superheroes. The 3 stars do their best with what they are given, which is not much to begin with. Weak MCU films in the past have been able to be somewhat redeemed by charming lead actors. However, The Marvels is just too bogged down by other issues. There hasn't been an MCU film that feels this tampered with since the early days of phases 1 and 2. Why did it need to be this movie? Well, maybe because Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige's dream of interconnecting stories from both film and TV has its fair share of limitations. Since plenty of plot threads from the first Captain Marvel movie are merely glossed over, The Marvels doesn't work as a proper sequel. There's obvious turmoil running from the top to bottom of Marvel Studios right now, and it's going to take a lot more than a cuteness overload with CGI cats to make these projects watchable. At this moment, things aren't looking good for the future of Marvel films, yet there could still be time for Kevin Feige and his team to apply any lessons learned. Will that actually happen though after the continuous disappointments of Phase 5? Who knows, but after sitting through the credits of The Marvels, I can say with certainty that any changes will come far later down the road, as things might just be looking to get bleaker in the immediate future." End quote. Good lord, dude. So it's evident that The Marvels is a certified bomb in pretty much every way imaginable. By the way, Discussing Film gave the flick a 2 out of 5 stars. But based on what they said, this sounds more like a 1-star or no-star film if we're being real. It's very clear that the Marvels is not going to make its $300 million budget back. By the way, in case you didn't know, this film has a bigger budget than Endgame somehow, likely due to reshoots. But this movie is the canary in the cinematic coal mine equivalent to Hollywood, that if you just hire people based on gender and diversity instead of skill and experience, you will not only get a bad movie, but you'll lose a fortune too. I'm not saying women can't direct films, but The Marvels is a clear example of a studio bending the knee so hard to identity politics that it'll be impossible to forget this blunder in the coming years. And it looks like Kevin Feige, the architect of the MCU, might be jumping ship too if the rumors are true. According to Twitter user MyTimeToShineHello, who's leaked a ton of stuff in the past already, they've now claimed that Feige will be leaving the MCU post-Secret Wars for Star Wars. Allegedly, Disney is planning for Kevin Feige to take over Star Wars from Kathleen Kennedy, which would of course leave the MCU without someone to shepherd it. But based on Kevin's work with the MCU post-Endgame, besides maybe No Way Home and the success of Doctor Strange 2, the majority of the MCU since then has been nothing but declining viewership and profits. So to take someone who's clearly submerged themselves in the politics of current day taking over Star Wars, it doesn't really make a difference if Kevin or Kathleen runs it, because you're still left with someone who adheres to the agenda and the messaging, so really, nothing has changed. I understand why Disney needs to course correct Star Wars since the general interest in the brand has hit an all-time low, and it doesn't just affect shows on Disney+, but that interest permeates to other forms of media too, like video games or even products like toys. Not to mention theme parks too, which Disney's Star Wars Hotel has already closed and was around $2 billion to make. But the problem here isn't the IPs, as Marvel and Star Wars are absolutely desirable brands. The problem here is that the people in charge are ruining it with messaging and pandering. The days of Civil War and Infinity War worked so well because there was barely as much virtue signaling. They existed and did well because they were solid products first and they told their stories that people actually wanted to see. The Marvels is the opposite of Infinity War. It's something designed to talk down and lecture first instead of being a movie meant to entertain. I don't care how many people were behind the camera or in the writer's room. It's like customers caring if the people cooking their food in a restaurant hits certain diversity quotas or something. I don't care who the person is cooking my food when I go out to eat. All I care is that it tastes good, it's worth what I paid for, and it doesn't give me food poisoning. General movie-going audiences won't care that The Marvels is this big female-made movie, because ultimately all that matters is you are entertained and not annoyed by current-day messaging. And unfortunately for Disney, they are drowning in the nonsense at this point. And nobody can really fix or heal their franchises, and it's simply because everyone who is in a position of power over there, they all think and act the same. What Disney should be doing is hiring people with experience regardless of their political leanings or beliefs. If you truly want your products to cater to the wants of today, you need to reflect that in who you hire. And something I think we can all agree on is that when it comes to comics, movies, or whatever, they are not hiring people who think differently anymore. You have to be a liberal thinking person in order to write comics these days. Or at the very least, you need to pretend you are so that you can get work. Which of course, no writer will admit to this, but I guarantee you there's plenty of people working in comics or video games who do this just so that they can pay their bills. If companies like Disney and others want to actually represent the cultural zeitgeist today in their properties, then they would have to hire people they don't agree with on every level, but let's be real, nobody agrees with anybody on every facet to begin with. And if you do find yourself agreeing 100% with everyone around you, that's an echo chamber. I don't agree with everything people who make content similar to mine say, but it doesn't mean I can't talk to them. Hell, I have had private conversations with YouTubers you definitely watch, and trust me, we do not all think the same. And that's a good thing in my opinion, because if we do all think the same, things get boring. And if Disney really wants to change how they do things, they need to hire and embrace creators they might not agree with on everything. Why do you think Eric July's Ripperverse is doing so well? It's simply because it's giving people what they want, because Marvel and DC are ran by activist weirdos who aren't allowed to think differently or make anything that challenges their accepted ideologies. And whether Disney or any other corporation would like to admit it or not, it's an echo chamber. And when everyone sounds and thinks the same way, it doesn't matter who's in the driver's seat, since it'll change nothing but who becomes the next punching bag when shit continues to keep getting worse. One reporter, whose name is Orion Johnson, who works at the Boston Herald, chimed in on what Kevin Feige's alleged takeover of Star Wars means for Kathleen Kennedy when he said, "If you are the president of a division of a company and the CEO takes the president of a more successful division and gives them your resources, personnel, and your IP and has them answer to someone higher than you in the organization, then I hate to tell you this, but you have been demoted." This wasn't done as a favor to Kevin. He has plenty to do without the stress and headaches involved in Star Wars. This is a move made to resuscitate a dying brand that has lost viewers, and is dragging down sales in other divisions like parks and recreation and licensed merchandise. But like I said, it doesn't matter ultimately whether it's Kevin or Kathleen running Star Wars or Marvel at this point, because both of these figureheads have proven that they will abandon any semblance of integrity in the ongoing crusade of garnering as much ESG score as humanly possible. And you know it's bad when, besides the Marvels imploding and Star Wars decaying from the inside out, you now have more reports saying that Disney is reeling and is pissed off to this day about South Park's Panderverse special. This all comes from YouTube channel Midnight's Edge, who I usually listen to myself while I play video games. Especially when I'm fighting bosses in Liza P, for example, their commentary soothes my brain, while I die as big robot puppets crush me into paste. I beat Liza P recently, great game, totally unrelated to this video I know, but anyway. Midnight's Edge's Andre and Harryar said, and I quote, "What we have heard is that the powers in Disney and Lucasfilm, like everyone else, knew the episode was coming, and they knew it was going to have a go at them, but they didn't know in advance in exactly which way. And what they saw allegedly went beyond anything they ever imagined, and then even their worst of nightmares. The behind-the-scenes response then at Disney was a mix of shock, embarrassment, feelings of betrayal, and overall butthurt. There apparently were some lines of communication between Disney and Paramount over the course of the weekend, but from what I gather, very little constructive came out of it, as apparently many in Disney's end were a tad emotional, especially the true believers of the woke, because South Park just gave it a black eye. That minor lip service that was towards criticizing YouTubers, and those would send Kathleen Kennedy hate mail. As for Kathleen Kennedy, she reportedly did not take it well, not at all." End quote. So it seems after all that Disney's executives, including Kathleen Kennedy, have in fact watched the Panderverse, and they are pissed, dear viewer, which honestly they should be, because prior to the Panderverse, really the only people calling them out were people like myself and others who do work like me. Now that South Park has opened the gates and made their special, it's now become cool, or I guess more accepted would be the better way of explaining it, when it comes to criticizing what Disney is doing. I genuinely believe it's because of the Panderverse special that you're seeing the Marvels get destroyed by reviewers. Had the Panderverse not existed and the spotlight wasn't shined so brightly on Disney shenanigans, I firmly believe the Marvels would have at least have gotten a fresh score. Not an amazing score, mind you, but passing at least. Because these reviewers know that even though they likely agree with what people like myself are saying, their jobs and connections would be severed if they spoke out against their corporate masters. But now that the Panderverse has come and rubbed its butt cheeks all over Mickey Mouse's face and gave him pink eye, now even the reviewers know they can't hide behind corporate delusion anymore. The mask is off, Mickey Mouse has been backed into a corner and he's just looking for a way out. But the truth is, dear viewer, there is nothing Disney can do in order to sidestep the nuclear fallout of South Park. They are exposed now, revealed for everything they are, and no amount of putting a chick in it and making it gay and lame will do anything now. Because if Disney, or really any entertainment property, does pander in the future, South Park special will follow them like a grim reaper at all times. The Marvels is everything wrong with woke Hollywood, from the actual film to the talented people behind it. Like I said, no one cares if The Marvels was directed by a black woman. The audience doesn't care if a woman was behind the camera or wrote the script. All audience want is good old-fashioned escapism that entertains first instead of lecturing them. And Disney is pissed that there will be an insanely higher level of eyes on them when it comes to their pandering. And you can't feel bad for Disney, because what's happening to them is no one's fault but their own. And like I said earlier, it's because they keep hiring the same kind of people with the same mindsets exclusively. And this is why stuff stagnates and loses sales. If you keep pushing stuff that doesn't work, no amount of changing who's in the driver's seat will change the fact that what you're pushing just doesn't work. Like, how much more common sense can I say for these people to understand? Why do you think the Punisher no longer uses guns and had his logo changed? It was because he was seen in the eyes of liberal weirdos to be a symbol of conservatives and police officers. Despite the fact that Punisher sold because he's cool, they had to tear him down and change him in order to resemble nothing of what made him popular to begin with. And in doing so, you took a character people loved and you ruined him down to his DNA. All in order to pander to people who likely won't even buy your new bitch version of Punisher anyway. Comic books used to challenge the reader, video games used to be true to their source material, and movies used to be forms of escapism to give people the emotional release from everyday life. Nowadays, we're living in a cesspool of content twisting and spitting on us for thinking differently or having our own opinions. This is not the entertainment I remember so fondly growing up with. Instead, we're left with slop like the Marvels, where even female reviewers say stuff like this. As is often the case with Marvel's girl power attempts, it feels a little pandering in all the wrong places and doesn't really engage with any specific or unique female point of view. And I just know right now Brie Larson is drinking a big glass of wine while her publicist cries to her on the phone. And Kevin Feige is probably staring at the poster of the Avengers hanging in his office, wondering where he went so wrong. And Kathleen Kennedy is probably hosting a 40-person LGBTQ diversity virtual summit in order to brainwash future employees at Disney in order to follow her agenda. Whether it's the Marvels or games like Spider-Man 2, the absolute state of Disney right now is at a point where they simply can't keep doing things the way they've been doing it anymore. The company will not survive the next 10 years at best if they keep allowing years like 2023 content-wise to keep happening. The Marvels will flop 100%. The Panderverse has exposed Disney for everything they are, and dear viewer, I just want you to know that even though things look bleak, you need to realize this one simple truth. We are winning. We can save pop culture, and we can do it through voicing our opinions on social media, speaking with our wallets, and pushing back when they expect us to sit down and take it. So keep fighting. We can save pop culture and hopefully one day return this world to some semblance of common sense and normality. But until then, I thank you for watching, and please take care of yourselves. Subscribe and like the video if you enjoyed. Thanks to my patrons for their undying support. And take this moment to realize that all of this so far has resulted in one simple truth, which is that these companies are listening, and we won't let them silence or belittle us into accepting the bare minimum. Because, dear viewer, you deserve so much more than this. So thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.